verse 24, he says, "But in those days, after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will be falling from heaven, and the power of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out his angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven." He says the time is going to come. He says after that tribulation. And the real signs, he says, they're not about wars or rumors of wars. It's not about earthquakes, but it has to do with just the cosmic heavens. It's talking about the sun going dark, the moon not shining, the stars falling from heaven. Even as we were singing earlier on, you put the stars into place. Yes, he did. And he says that the time's going to come when those stars that I put in place are going to be shaken, because I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back. And in Hebrews 9:28 it says that Christ, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin, but to save those who are eagerly awaiting for him. What a shame that as we get to this topic of Jesus coming back, that all we tend to care about is how and when. But the wonderful thing is that he is and why. He's coming to save those that eagerly wait for him, to redeem his people, to fix his world, and to set up his kingdom. So I don't care how he comes back. I think I know, I might be wrong, but he can come back however he wants, and I'm just going to be on like the welcoming committee, being like, all right, I'm not like the planning committee, being like, listen, okay, first this, then this. I just am reading Mark 13, I think things are going to happen like this, but no matter how he shows up, I am going to be one of those. And Christian, I hope all of us can be those that are eagerly awaiting his appearance. He talks about a fig tree, and he says there are signs that are coming that are showing that the delivery is coming. There's the labor, there's the birth pains, there's the way that life is going to be, and that is going to be pointing towards me coming back. And he says it's just like when a fig tree begins to show forth its leaves. You know that the seasons are changing. He says, they ask him, how are we going to know? When are these things going to be? He doesn't really give them an answer as far as when. In fact, he then gives the kind of shocking thing to say, no one knows. He says, the Father knows, but he would say the angels don't know, nor does the Son. Interesting Trinitarian theology here. Man, we could spend a whole sermon on it, but this is only a side note. But just to say that Jesus, fully God, humbled himself, abdicated certain aspects of his divinity. That's the same reason why he was hungry and thirsty and tired. Jesus gave those things up for his time on earth. And here we see an example where he says, you want to know when I'm coming back? He's like, I don't even know. No one can know. Jesus' conversation, I suppose, began with 4 people coming to him. Peter, James, John, and Andrew. And they asked him this question. It began with him conversing, just him and these 4 disciples. And then at the end, he's saying, these things that I'm saying to you, it's not just for you. It's for everyone. He says there should be an alertness and an awareness that I will come back, and let's be found busy, he says, when I do come back. So there's the idea of waiting. But what does waiting look like? Rather than my own cute stories, here I'm going to read 4 different Bible verses to us that just show us what waiting looks like for us. You can either listen as I read or you can follow along. First one is from Titus chapter 2, verse 12. I will just say them without comment. Titus 2, I'll start in verse 11 actually. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people, training us to renounce ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in the present age, waiting for our blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave himself to redeem us from all lawlessness, and to purify for himself a people for his own possession, who are zealous for good works. Turn over to 1 Peter chapter 4. The Apostle Peter, who was one of those 4 men who asked Jesus that question about dates and times. Peter says in chapter 4, verse 7, he says, the end of all things is at hand. Therefore, be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. Above all, keep loving one another earnestly. You turn the page to 2 Peter chapter 3. And the 3rd chapter of this book is actually, most of it is about Jesus' second coming. He talks about it from verse 1 all the way down to verse 10. And in conclusion of his teaching about Jesus' returning, he says, since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of holiness and godliness, waiting for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be set on fire and dissolved, and the heavenly bodies will melt as they burn. But according to his promise, we are waiting a new heaven and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. Turn over 2 pages to the book of James. A couple pages. James 5, verse 7. He says, be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. But behold, the judge is standing at the door. So, as we talk about Jesus coming back and some of the signs that are going to come beforehand, it never says, behold, the end of all things is at hand, so make a chart and watch the news like with a checklist, you know, oh, this is this and this is this, and have a big graph of everything figured out. But it says, the end of all things is at hand, so therefore be steadfast in your prayers. You know, the end of all things is at hand, so therefore love one another. The end of all things is at hand, so therefore be patient with one another. Because we don't learn this so that we can win arguments. We don't learn this so that we can have clever things to say when there's the next earthquake or a cute comment about a famine. We're not called this to be triumphant and arrogant and jerks about, oh, well, I know a thing or two about the end of the world. No, this should motivate us, the fact that Jesus is coming back, that, as James says, the judge is at hand to watch our lives, to be found loving, to be found caring, to be found doing something that he would love to see his servants doing. As the parable told about the man leaving his house under the care of other people. He wants to come back and find them doing what he commissioned them to do, being awake.